I was in my early 20s and I'd fallen madly in love with a guy. We used to see each other every weekend, and I live in Nottingham and he was in Norwich. And I remember one day it was a Sunday afternoon and we were just chilling out on the couch. We were, watching the TV. We were cuddling up, and he turned around and he looked at me with tears in his eyes and he said, "I can't do this anymore." And I was like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" I remember being stood on the bottom step, kind of the stairs on my house, flinging my arms around him, kissing him, and then him getting in his car and reversing off my drive and blowing me a kiss saying, "I love you," and waving goodbye. And it was the last time I ever saw him. And that broke me. That really did break my heart.
Rachel, at what stage in your life did you find yourself? What relationship broke you to discover yourself?
Oh my goodness, what a question. Okay, so I guess I feel as though I'm constantly finding myself. One of the things that I believe in is that I'm ever evolving. I think we all are. And one of my favorite sayings is if we're not growing, we're dying or we're dead. So I've always kind of got that in my mind. And so I guess I feel like I'm always finding new things out about myself. And, and I'm kind of always looking to push my potential to see where I can go next. But I guess in terms of to the second part of your question, which was a relationship that broke me. Well, I've had my heart broken a few times, John. I really have. And probably one of the hardest ones I didn't see coming at all. I was in my early 20s and I'd fallen madly in love with a guy. We were having quite a long distance relationship, not silly long, like not different countries long distance, but we used to see each other every weekend. And I live in Nottingham and he was in Norwich. And we were so madly in love. I just thought that the worst thing that I thought that could ever happen that would split us up would be that something traumatic would happen, like one of us would be in a car accident or would be killed suddenly, because I just could not see the end of this relationship in any way, shape or form. And I remember one day it was a Sunday afternoon and we were just chilling out on the couch. We were, watching the TV. We were cuddling up, and he turned around and he looked at me with tears in his eyes and he said, "I can't do this anymore." And I was like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" And we talked, and I remember us being stood on the bottom step, kind of the stairs on my house, flinging my arms around him, kissing him, and then him getting in his car and reversing off my drive and blowing me a kiss saying, "I love you," and waving goodbye. And it was the last time I ever saw him. And that broke me. That really did break my heart. And I'd not long moved into my house. And so I was very lonely, very, very sad at that time. It was really, really difficult. And it was years before I would say I kind of fully got over that. One of the things that I did do that massively helped was I got a dog. So I got a companion, which was amazing. Which of course gets you out the house, gets you into the fresh air, puts your focus onto something other than you. And I think the things that maybe I learned from that time in my life is that even though I was so sad and so lonely and for such a long time, I know that change is certain, and that whatever season we're in, it will change. And I held on to that belief. And, we can either choose to live in fear or in faith. And it would have been very easy for me to have believed, and I say this, and being honest, there were times when I did believe that, I was never going to find anyone ever again, and I would never find someone that I loved in the same way, or as much as I loved that person. But both fear and faith, they are both just our imagination. It's just that faith is our imagination directed. And I chose to believe in love again. And funnily enough, I always remember there was a film that inspired me to do that. And I don't know if any of your listeners will have watched this film and can resonate with them. John, I don't know if you've seen it. It's a film based on the book by Nicholas Sparks called The Notebook. So is that one you've seen, John?
No, I don't remember that film at all, to be honest.
No. Maybe some of your listeners will have seen that one, but that definitely kind of that reignited my belief in love again. So yeah, and I'm happy to say I found it.
And at any stage after that, immediately after the breakup of that relationship with your then boyfriend, did you blame yourself or your boyfriend for the breakup of that relationship?
I didn't. I was very confused at the time. I don't think I really understood why we were breaking up, or what was happening. I think now, as I look back at, sometimes when you can look back at a period of your life, you have a very different perspective, don't you? When you're not in all of the emotional turmoil that can be going on at the time. And when I look back at it now, I think our lives were maybe going in very different directions. And I think he could see that. And I didn't. I was just blinded by the love and just thought that the love would get us through. So I don't think there was anyone to blame. And it was a beautiful relationship. And it's one of those things that now I look back on, blessed to have had that in my life and to have had that experience. But so grateful that I have found love again with my now husband.
And did you find that excuse me, I'm going to cough here.
Okay.
Did you find the breakup of that relationship, eventually made you a more mature person?
Oh, for sure. It does. It changes you, doesn't it? And yeah, it helped me. It helped me get much more okay with being on my own and living on my own and doing things by myself, I think. For sure. And yeah, we all of us in our lives have some painful things that we all go through, and I think it's being able to sort of to keep that faith during those difficult times. It takes a lot of digging deep sometimes, and it's not always, it's not pleasant and it's not nice, but I think if we can continue to take care of ourselves, like the dog was great because it got me the exercise, it got me the fresh air, it got me the daylight. And as I say, it got the focus off me and onto something else. Because I think the other thing is that I think a lot of suffering is caused when we're focused very much on ourselves and what we've either got less of or what we've lost or what we might never get back again. And those people who, who spend a lot of time focusing on others, whether that be, a pet, as it was in my case, or, helping other people or doing other good causes, it's very hard to stay stuck in that place of suffering, I think, when you're, when you're focused on, sort of supporting and helping and helping others.
Yeah, I agree with that there. But sometimes, you mentioned there a few minutes ago, it's good to be on your own, to be able to look after yourself. I think independence is good in life, but being on your own all the time is not good for anybody, because we are, as human beings, we're social beings, and we do need the company of other people to bounce ideas off, to share interests with, to share values with. That's how we develop friendships and relationships, ultimately, is by finding people who we can share interests and values with. So where did you meet your current husband?
So I met him at work. Yeah. So well, he would tell the story probably a little better than I would. But I burst in on the scene at the place that he'd been at work at since he'd left university. So he'd been there a long time, and I was a real kind of ball of energy, ready to make change and do positive things. And I think the first time he properly caught a glimpse of me, I was presenting and sharing some new plans that I had for a product range to his team. And yes, he would tell you he put a lot of groundwork in. So we started out very, very slowly. We would ride our bikes to and from work together. We even learnt to ski together, and just at one of the sort of the dry ski slopes. And and over a number of weeks and months, things really blossomed. And now we're married. We've been married, it's going to be our 10-year anniversary. In fact, it's this month, because we are in August now, so it's a little later on this month. And we've got 2 gorgeous boys who are 7 and 4. And I'm so grateful, and I feel so blessed to have such a wonderful man in my life.
I was talking to a person called Mel Wizu the other day, and she was saying to me that when she was working and she had her 2 daughters, she had to look very carefully at her work-life balance, because, she was going from working long hours. Now she had children to look after. She had to really look after her own well-being and, be there for her children. Did you have to make big changes to your working life schedule when your 2 boys were born?
Yes, I think, and when they're very little, they're obviously so dependent on you. They do. They really need that care, don't they? Around the clock, particularly, kind of in the very early stages. Obviously now they are a little older, things do get a bit easier. But I like to think of it like work-life integration, which is really beautiful. And I love what I have now with them. I walk them to school every day, unless there's something exceptional going off. The summertime, as we are now, I get to kind of look after them, and I have some great backup support from family and a good nursery and kids clubs and things like that, which really means that that extra support is really super and useful. And I just think it has been difficult, but and it is challenging at times. But number one, I think as parents, you really need to look after yourselves. Sleep deprivation is a very real thing. And one of the things that I've had to be very strict with myself on is about a consistent bedtime. I sometimes will be prone to staying up late when the children are asleep to finish off pieces of work. It's quiet and you can get things done. But actually, sort of over the last 6 months, I've been very rigid with a 10 o'clock bedtime, because those children, with them being small, they're still getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning, sometimes a bit before, and sometimes they're still waking up in between. And I know that I need that sort of 7 to 8 hours sleep in order to function really well and be at my best. So number one would be sleep. Number two would be kind of looking after, your own physical health, and, whether that's with what we're eating or our exercise and things, because the truth is if we have no energy, if you have 2 people coming to a relationship, whether it's a parental relationship or whether it's a romantic one, or even if it's a work-based relationship, you might have 2 people coming to a relationship that might really love each other or really admire, really want to work together. But if their energy is low, or even if one person's energy is low, then that relationship, you're not going to bring your best self to that relationship, and it's not going to be the best outcome for both of you. So I think protecting that energy, I always think of life in kind of 3 simple chunks. And the chunks for me are energy, number one, love, number 2, and work, number 3, you know, work, a mission, that we love. And so I think looking after those in that order and that priority is really key. Naturally, when we have very young children, of course, they do take that priority up, and that can be extra tricky, kind of getting that, kind of prioritizing that and getting it in can just be a tough few years.
I know what you're saying there. In terms of your own children, they're 7 and 4 years of age, respectively. They're off school for the summer holidays, but regardless, it's bright early in the morning time. They want to be up out in the back garden playing with their friends. So you have to be up early in the morning to keep them happy and on side. There's no staying on in bed till 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning for schoolboys when they're on holidays. They're just full of energy. So they have to get out of the house and play with their friends. I agree with that. Yeah. So you have to keep your own energy up. That's the difficult part in it. So you have to be able to regulate your life and try to avoid working too late into the night, so that when you go to bed, you get yourself a good night's sleep. That's important. I agree with all of that. So, you're happily married for 10 years now at this stage. You've got 2 boys. What, from your own perspective and your husband's perspective, what life do you want your boys to have eventually for themselves?
Oh, I guess the same as any parent, really, which is this, that you want them to be happy. That is really my greatest wish, for them both. And happy, healthy, safe, well. That's what I wish for both of them.
Yeah, I think that's a very mature way of looking at it, to be quite honest, because you get a lot of parents. I've seen it over the years myself, where you get parents who have ideas in their head for what they want their children to do, but the child or the son or daughter is not happy with it. And there's kind of disconnect between the parents and the children then. I think you're looking at it from a very mature perspective, because you want your children to be happy. It doesn't matter to you what your sons do in their professional lives eventually. That's their own choice. As long as they're happy, that's the most important thing in life. I quite honestly agree with you in that regard. So there's no point doing a job if it's not for you. So I think it's, not a good idea from any parent's perspective to try and push your children down a path that's not for them.
Absolutely. And I believe that we'll bring our best work and our gifts. We've all got gifts, we've all got talents, and I believe that we'll bring those to the world when we can follow our hearts and do what we really, really love. And I know that that's not easy to always work out like what that is. It wasn't easy for me. I was telling my boys this morning, actually, that I was in my 30s before I really worked out what my passion and what my love, was all about, and what I really wanted to do. And that's still evolving. And I hope, and I believe that will be until, the day I die, I hope. And so, it's, I think, following your heart, following what lights you up, those things that you could lose hours over, or that you could talk to somebody forever about because you just love them and you're so passionate about it. I think that's where we start to access our gifts. And I think as adults, it gets a little bit, it can get a little bit dumbed out of us, and reconnecting with that lights you up and going after that and following that. I would certainly encourage anyone at any age to do.
Yeah. I do think in school, particularly, in say sixth form college, where children are doing where young people are going for their A levels, I think it's important that there's, a constructive conversation between careers guidance, teachers. That's what I call them anyway. I don't know the modern term is, and students in school, that when people want to go to university to, do a degree or to study for a professional qualification, they're going down a path that they just, not that they just want to do it, but they feel they have a vocation for it in life. I think that's really important in school. Looking back at your past, what circumstances would you consider as character building blocks that shape the person you have become today?
Oh my goodness. I guess the obvious ones that stick out are going to be the the problems and the challenges, aren't they? I think they teach us, so much in life. I know we've talked about, John, on a previous show, things like my role being made redundant for the first time, and that had a real impact, but as every cloud and all of that role being made redundant led me to work where my husband now works. So it's funny how life sometimes has a bit of a plan for us. I also remember very early on in my career, I failed a promotional panel, and that hit me really hard, and the feedback from that hit me really hard as well. And in fact, it probably took me 2 or 3 years to kind of come out of the other side of that. And I guess, what did that teach me? I think it taught me a bit about feedback, actually, because I was very open to that feedback and took it all very much to heart and all on board. And I think I took it too much to the extreme. Yeah. And I guess it also taught me that I think life does happen for us, and even these problems that we have, they seem to steer our lives in certain ways. And the most important thing is, not that we want less problems, because, actually we've all got them, but actually it's about, what do those problems mean? And, and how can these problems help me grow and help me get better and, come out of it the other side? So yeah, there's a number of things, and, and even in my business. So I've had my business now 7, nearly 8 years, and there's been times when it's been a challenge in the business as well. But I think always having that belief and that faith and that certainty that I would find a way through, that's probably one of the most important lessons I've learned through all of those problems and all of those challenges, is just retaining that self-belief. And that's not always easy, because there are times, of course, when you question yourself and you doubt yourself and you wonder if what you're doing is the right thing. And should you pack it all in, and should you give up? And of course, like, I'm human, and those conversations have happened in my own head, I mean, but I don't let them stay there for very long. And I remind myself with courage and with faith and trusting that, no, this is where I'm going and this is why I'm doing it. And, absolutely, I can find a way and I can do this. And sometimes it's about asking as well, like, who can help? And I'm fortunate because, my husband has always been so supportive, particularly from a business perspective, of me.
It's a healthy way to look at self-employment, because it can be a lonely place, as we both know from experience. But what you mentioned there a minute ago is very important, that you have to trust in your ability, you have to have faith in your ability, and you have to find your purpose in life. And when you do that, then it's onward and upward for a lot of people. But there's always going to be days when you say to yourself, what have I done today? What have I achieved today? We all have those days. But, put them behind you and move forward the next day with determination and self-belief and a bit of gratitude, and then you get there in the end. So I think it's a case of, every day try and achieve something, no matter how small it is, towards achieving your bigger goal in life.
And John, if I may just add to that, because I don't know if anyone listening, if this will resonate with, but I also have some perfectionist tendencies, which I know is not necessarily a good thing. And I'm very aware of it. And so one of the things for me is that if it's not 100%, if I get to the end of my day and I haven't got 100% of the things done that I wanted to get done, or I feel somehow I've not been good enough in some way, shape or form, like that in the past has been a very difficult habit for me to get out of, either pushing myself further. And I have to remind myself that actually, for me and for others who are like me, actually 90% is more than enough, and giving ourselves margin and room for life. This morning, John, I had Play-Doh all over the place. I had water on the kitchen table. I had water all over the floor. I had the kids having a great time, but actually I'm there trying to get ready for work and out for an appointment. And thankfully, I'm giving myself some grace, and the children some grace, in kind of going, okay, this is that 10% of life, that's just happening, that you've just got to, well, I'm here, I'm doing my best, and and just kind of dealing with those things as they come, and being kind to ourselves along the way. There was a great quote, and I don't know if I'll put my hands on it at the moment, but I love it, and it's from Brene Brown's book Dare to Lead, and she talks about, at the end of the day, whether we get it all done or we don't, what we do or we don't get done, it's enough, and we are enough.
It's a great way to look at life, and a healthy way to look at life. If we were to achieve every day what we set out to do, we'd be brilliant people, but life gets in the way, of course. And you just mentioned a great example there this morning, where you had your two boys in the kitchen. There was water on the kitchen table. There was water on the floor. They were playing games. They were enjoying themselves. They were being children, of course, 4 and 7 years of age, respectively. So you have to make allowances, as you say, and you have to set aside the fact that you might love to have the lovely tidy house, but children are children. Looking back at your life now, what lessons have you learned from all the relationships with regards to family, academic, work, and romance?
I will start with the romance one, and this comes from my husband, and it's so simple, and it's just one of those beautiful pieces of timeless wisdom. And that is, all you really have to do is make one another feel special. And if you can make one another feel special, which is kind of what you do at the beginning of any relationship, you're always looking at how you can make one another feel loved, appreciated, respected, then there's not an end. There's not an end. And I'm not perfect at this, and I know that I need to be much, much better. But I just think he simplifies it so well, in just saying, make one another feel special. And if that's what we can do every day of our lives, then that's good. That is a really, really good place for us to be. So yeah, that's the simple one from a relationship point of view. Parents, you asked from a parenting perspective, didn't you? What have I learned about parenting?
Family, academic, work, and romance.
But okay. So family. I think the thing I've learned with family, particularly having younger children, is you've just got to let go a bit. Like you said earlier, like you can't always have the perfectly tidy house and things exactly as you want them. But I also think that children are such great teachers as well. And I probably forget that a bit too often myself. And they teach us such a lot, and they are masters in influence and negotiation as well. So I think actually, if you can give feedback and influence your children well and in a really positive way, then wow, that is something. So yeah, they're just amazing teachers, and so I would just always I would always lean into that, remembering, of course, and this is tying the family and the romance thing together. I think that for me it's really important that my children see that my husband is my number one. Now, for some people that might feel harsh, right? But actually, I want them to see how two people who are passionately devoted to one another, kind of act around one another, because that's what I want for them someday. And, even to the point, like when my husband comes in, I want to be the first person at the door there, like putting my hands around his face and giving him a kiss. you know, even before he said hello to the children, because yeah, I just think that is so important. I will tell my boys at bedtime, this is me and daddy time now. Okay, so if you don't want to go to sleep, I just don't want to hear you. Okay, so if you're not going to sleep, fine, but it's mine and daddy's time now, and this is really important time for us. And so I think that's really important too. And then academically, well, academically, this is for me, I think it's just got to come back to one of my biggest values, which is around growth, and just that we're all ever evolving, which kind of brings us right back to the beginning of our conversation. And you know, that we're always learning, always growing. And you know, I love to read. I didn't used to, and I think one of the things that's helped me enormously academically recently is I've learned how to read books quickly by listening to them on audio and then following them with the book as well and a highlighter pen, and being able to kind of, you know, I will read roughly maybe a book every 2 weeks, and I'll kind of get and I'll get through material that I love, like Brené Brown, who I just mentioned on Dare to Lead, and I'll get through material like that, just so that I'm just constantly learning, evolving, picking up new things from different people. And I just think that's, you know, so whatever it is from an academic perspective, I suppose it's just keep going and keep learning in areas that you're passionate about. And that comes back to following your heart again, doesn't it? And what lights you up.
Well done in reading books for 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, I should say, because I'm reading the Social Skills Guidebook and I'm reading it for considerably longer than 2 weeks. It's even longer than 2 months, it's probably about 6 months at this stage, because I have to reread some of the chapters to get the core points second time around, because that's just the way I am. I have to read some chapters 2 or 3 times to get the gist of it, because, you know, sometimes I kind of misinterpret the core message, or I have to look back over a section of a chapter to reread it and to understand it in more depth. So well done in getting through a book every 2 weeks. I wish I could.
And I have to say, you know, you do have to sometimes reread, and you do need to, and I try and make notes in the margin to sort of to help as well. And the other thing I found enormously useful recently is ChatGTP as well, because that will give you a summary, it will give you questions that you can ask yourself to help you reflect on the book, and things like that. So they can really help, I think, you know, kind of ingrain the messages and the key takeaways as well.
Yeah. And do you find that, you know, if you read self-development books, that you have to go out there to networking events to start applying what you're learning in the book, you know, to get the real value from actually reading the book in the first instance?
Absolutely. I think whatever we're learning, you know, whatever we're learning, if we can practically apply it straight away, if we can teach somebody else what we've learned, you know, I think they are two of the best ways to, you know, not just to know something, because, you know, understanding something is maybe not the same as knowing something, if you get what I mean. It's like we can cognitively understand it, but then not put it into practice. And I think, you know, it's really, we only truly know something when we put it into practice, and we apply it in our lives. And, you know, this is one of the things, I'm always testing new knowledge, new information, and trying things out, because I want to see, do they work in my life, and how do I make them work and integrate into my life? Because only then can I talk from a place of authenticity around what might help other people as well.
I know what you're saying there. What you're getting by reading the self-development books and then applying the lessons is you're getting greater level of self-assurance, and ultimately you're developing your self-esteem. Well done to you. One final question here for you. Name one relationship you'd like to have again, given another chance, and what would you do differently this time around?
Well, that's, oh gosh, from a romantic perspective, I love my husband and I couldn't imagine being with anyone else. And there's so much for me to do better in our current relationship. And as we've said, I'm learning all the time with this one. So I guess in terms of what I suppose in terms of what I I'm learning and what I am getting better at, I hope, is that making him feel special every day? Is that recognizing, I don't know if you've ever come across the book, The 5 Love Languages, John. Is that something that you've heard of?
No.
It's a great book, and actually they've applied it now in different settings for family and also for work as well. But it's the idea, very briefly, is like, one person's love language is not the same as another. So, it's almost like, if I don't understand my husband's love language, I could be, telling him that I love him in ways that I would, feel loved, but he wouldn't feel the same way if I'm not understanding the ways in which to communicate with him my love for him. And the 5 love languages are, number 1 is physical touch. Number 2 is acts of service. Number 3 is words of appreciation. A 4th one is quality time, and the 5th one is gifts. Kind of giving gifts in some way, shape, or form. And so, for my husband, it's physical touch and words of appreciation, his top 2, and that doesn't have to be big things. It can literally just be like, just a rub on the back or a squeeze when he comes in, or, and it's just me remembering things like that and just letting him know how much I appreciate all that he does, and how much I appreciate him. And so sometimes I think we think where there's relationships where there's a lot of love, but actually maybe there might not be so much passion. I think sometimes it feels like there's this huge leap to make. And what I've learned is, by sort of applying these 5 love languages, is that, and recognizing what my husband, and you can take a test online to find out yours and your partner's love languages really easily, and it's free. And it's, just understanding that and then applying that, can just change things so magically. It's just small things. The little things can just make such a difference. And for me, I'm trying to get better at the little things.
This has been a fascinating conversation today. And the 3 takeaways I have from today's conversation from a personal perspective are, firstly, I think it's great to be a lifelong student. Be prepared to learn something new every day and to develop your skill set. Secondly, independence is important, because by being independent, we can learn things for ourselves and develop our self-assurance and self-esteem. And thirdly, I think you mentioned it there in terms of running a business. You have good days and bad days, but it's so important to have faith in your ability and to put your best foot forward every day to try and achieve something small, no matter how much it is, towards achieving your goal. So well done for having a great conversation today about relationships, Rachael. Thank you.
John, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure once again. Thank you.
I'd gone out for the day with friends, and he didn't like it. And when I came back home, he was angry and he accused me of going off and having an affair, which I hadn't. And he picked me up and threw me against the wardrobe, and I ended up with concussion and whiplash, and thought, I can't stay here, it's not safe, he's going to end up killing me if I'm not careful. So it was that realization that I needed to do something here for my own safety. And then it thought, okay, well, why are these patterns repeating itself? Why have I had that sort of childhood and then gone into a similar environment in my adulthood? Something here needs to change.